In this tutorial in CyberLink PowerDirector, we'd like to take a second look at designing a creative title for narration. This is a situation where you have a vocal track only and someone is speaking, and you want to create titles to develop slides that appear when the person is talking. Another footnote on the first tutorial is I received some feedback, and some suggested that instead of using the marker at the top, the timeline markers, you might want to try using the beat markers to position your particular segments that contain the titles for the words or phrases that you use. So that's something to consider. But in this tutorial, we're going to use a slightly different approach to adding titles, and we'll show you a few things that might be valuable in terms of keyframing. But before we do that, let's give you a second example of what this might look like.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, "tapping at my chamber door, only this and nothing more."
In this particular tutorial, what I have done is I have used complex titles. Each title is a block that contains many titles inside of it, but each one comprises what I would call a slide in the finished product. So I'll double click on the first one here. That will open my title designer. And you notice already what we have here is a multiple number of individual titles that we've been able to put in. Now, the disadvantage of this approach is I don't have any beat markers, or I don't have any other kinds of markers that distinguish where a piece of text should start or stop. But I can simply use the play and listen to the audio. We'll do that right now.
Once upon a midnight dreary.
And then I can go ahead and lengthen or shorten the starting effect of each of these titles to try to get it perfect with the audio.
While I pondered
and so this gives me the option of doing it a little bit on the fly. I don't have a very specific way to do that except to keep my eye on the minutes and seconds above here and try to do the best I can to adjust the width accordingly. If I go to another title, I'll show you a little bit of a difference here. If I go to Volume of Forgotten Lore, you notice it's off the screen. In this case, I did some keyframing. Instead of using a starting effect, I decided to keyframe. So I'm going to click on the right arrow on track 5, and you see I set 2 keyframes. The first keyframe, it's off the screen. The second keyframe, it's on the screen. I just made it scroll in from right to left. And so we'll go ahead and play this part.
the curious volume of forgotten lore.
So the timing is still something you need to control, but you can use something as simple or as complex as a position keyframe to make a difference. I'll cancel my edit of that one. Don't want to save my changes. If we look at the next one, we'll see another use of keyframes in this particular kind of a setting. And so I'm going to click on that again and get back into my title designer. Here we have the word suddenly way on the left of the screen. And how did it get there? Well, what I did is I took my text over here, suddenly, I rotated it 90 degrees. I added a position keyframe where we start off the screen and then we move till it goes onto the screen and freezes there. This is an example of using it for a 90-degree contrast, also in terms of movement. Well, I could change where it is off the screen, and I could actually, let's for fun, let's not make it come in horizontally, but come in diagonally. it will move from the upper left down onto the screen, and so I haven't changed the timing of this slide, just the way the
While
word...
I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping.
And so that's another option you have on keyframing. So you can do position, you can do scale. Let's add a scale keyframe on this particular option here. I'll add scale here. We'll go to the next one, add another scale. And let's have it start, if I move back to the first one, off the screen. Well, I'll move it back down a little bit so we can see better. But let's have it start a lot smaller. And it will explode onto the screen this way.
While I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a...
Now it didn't explode. Why? Because if I look at suddenly, I have a flocking start to that. So if I want to change that, I'll go to my effect and my starting effect and turn it off. Because flocking overrides the scale keyframe here. Not the position, but the scale. And so sometimes you have to learn which wins out. Sometimes it's the effect, sometimes it's the keyframe. Let's try it again.
I nodded, nearly napping. Suddenly there came a tapping.
That's actually better than what I had before, I think. So that's an example of how you can combine the starting effects and keyframes, but you have to learn which one trumps the other one in certain situations. We'll simply save the changes we've made on that one. And another thing to notice is a lot of times if the narration is not steady, if the pace changes, you need to break it up into smaller words. Now, this is what we did on the last slide. Let me move here, and we're going to simply play it and look at the last couple of words in yellow when we play this.
"'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this and nothing more."
Notice there was a pause after "and." And so if I took "and nothing more" and put it all together, it would be hard to get all the letters on the screen at the same pace of the narration. So sometimes when there's a good pause, you need to break it up into two segments. And here it seemed to work pretty good. We'll play that again and you can see how we did that.
"'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this and nothing more."
So that's a second approach to the same challenge of trying to make interesting slides linked with narration in CyberLink PowerDirector.